Stand up and join me, and join David, is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, a local Boy Scout. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, David. He's here working on a scout project, and I just wanted to ask him to come up and start us off. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Crowley. Present. Mayor Hagan.
Here.
Councilmember Patton.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Here.
All right. At this time, I don't see Paul Zappatini?
Yeah.
Yep.
He just came in.
Oh, the guy in the blue shirt. Okay. All right. At this time, I'd like to read a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Placerville declaring November 1st as Extra Mile Day in the City of Placerville and commending the past president, Paul Zappatini, and the Kiwanis Club of Placerville for going the extra mile. Whereas the City of Placerville is a community that acknowledges that a special vibrance exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Placerville is a community that encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and in a total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Placerville acknowledges that the mission of the Extra Mile Foundation to create 500 extra mile cities in America is proud to support the Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2014. And whereas Placerville chooses to shine a light on the credible individuals and organizations within our community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of the community. And whereas the Kiwanis Club of Placerville, past president Paul Zappatini, and the Kiwanis Club, key clubs of El Dorado High School, Ponderosa High School, and Union Mine High School, Markham Middle School, Builders Club, and the Action Club for Adults with Disabilities have gone the extra mile and are recognized as the 2014 Extra Mile America recipients. And whereas the Kiwanis Club and their affiliated youth service organizations have been instrumental in the development of the Duffy Park Playground by donating over $30,000 in playground equipment and installation, assisting in the installation of the playground, and in ongoing maintenance of the playground and park. Now, therefore, I, Carl Hagan, Mayor of the City of Placerville, California, do hereby proclaim November 1st to be an Extra Mile Day in Placerville and encourage each individual in our community to take time this day to go the extra mile in his or her own life and to acknowledge all those around who are inspirational in their efforts and to make their organizations, families, and communities special. And Paul Zappatini has certainly done that, and the Kiwanis Club of Placerville does that every day in this community. So, Mr. Zappatini, if you'd like to come up to the podium, I'd appreciate it, and I'd give you this award and this resolution, a proclamation, excuse me, and have you say a few words about the Kiwanis Club.
Well, thank you very much to the city, to the council members, Mr. Driscoll, staff. I was told about this potential last night, and I passed up the middle of the second inning of the Giants game to come over here at Mayor's request. I accept the proclamation on behalf of Placerville Kiwanis, its service leadership programs that the mayor mentioned, all of our key clubs at the high school level, the Builders Club at our middle school level, and our Adults with Disabilities Club, the Action Club of El Dorado County. They are the ones and the members of the club that collectively do all the work. It is the motto of Kiwanis, and I adopt this wholeheartedly to improve the world, one community and one child at a time. And that's what we've been doing. And I accept the recognition. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just want to let you know that this last year, the whole the program was his goal was to make a child smile, and we did it every day.
Go Giants.
All right, at this time, we would also, let's see, closed session report. Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, the council did not take reportable action in closed session.
All right. And adoption of the agenda, please, by staff or by staff? By members of the council?
Move for adoption.
Second.
Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it passes unanimously. Announcements and presentations to the public. Item 6.1, Mr. Rivas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. At your June 10th, 2014 meeting, the council approved a consultant services agreement with a consulting firm of Nichols Consulting Engineers to prepare an update to the city's pavement management system. Margot Yap with NCE will make the presentation tonight to the council regarding general information about the pavement management system, pavement condition, their findings, and the funding required to maintain the city's streets at an acceptable level. There's no action being requested by the City Council tonight. This item is for your information only. So with that, I would like to introduce and present to you Margot Yap, who will be giving the presentation tonight. Margot, it's all yours.
Pierre, I'm going to stand by the side of the podium just so you can all see me. Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. I have a short presentation for you tonight, and as Pierre indicated, it's about the state of the pavements in the town. It's got some good news and bad news, and hopefully I can share more of the good news than the bad news with you tonight. So the first thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is the pavement management program that we used to get the results and do the analysis for you. And what I want you to think of is the pavement management, it's nothing more than just a tool that Public Works uses to make cost-effective decisions. And the key word here is cost-effective, because we want to make sure that we spend money wisely. And it answers these 4 questions that you see up on the slide. You know, how many miles of roads do we own? What do we maintain? And very importantly, is it good condition? Is it bad condition? I know that driving around town, most of us know where the good streets are and where the bad streets are. But we try to quantify it with the pavement management program. And then I think the last 2 questions are probably the most important. What are the repairs? How much does it cost to repair them? When do we need to do it? And very importantly, let's look at the future. What do we need to do to improve these roads? How much is it going to cost us? And so I have some of that, some of those answers for you tonight. The program that the city uses is something called Street Saver. It was developed by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. It's widely used in California, really one of the most popular programs in California. So the first thing I wanted to share with you is a little bit of information about your road network. And I'm specifically talking about the paved road network. In other words, you know, asphalt and Portland cement concrete. And first we do is we break it down into arterials, collectors, and local roads. And you're probably aware the arterials and collectors are the roads that have the highest volume of traffic. They're usually eligible for federal funding and other grants. And because they have a higher volume, they tend to also have a higher priority in the selection process for repairs. All in all, there's about 48 miles of roads in town. And when you look at the breakdown, however, you'll notice that the arterials and collectors form actually about more than 50% of the paved road network. The part that I think is important is not so much all these numbers and statistics, but that the value of this road network is about $59 million. That's a little bit over $1 million a mile. And I'd like you to think of this is a publicly owned asset. And if we had to replace it, if we had a catastrophe, a gigantic landslide, an earthquake of some sort, floods, and we had to rebuild this entire network, it would cost the town, the city, at least $59 million. And that's a conservative estimate. So we want to then think, well, if this is an asset that's valued at $59 million, what do we need to spend to maintain this asset? Because we can't spend zero. That would be letting a very valuable asset deteriorate. So we have some scenarios that I'd like to share with you. The first thing our technicians did when we came to town was we looked at the roads that you have, and we look at the distresses that are out there. And these are some of the typical distresses. I have, for instance, and each one tells a different story to me as a pavement engineer. When I see alligator cracking, for instance, I know that the cost of repair is going to be significant because that crack extends all the way down to the subgrade. On the other hand, if I see weathering and raveling, that's a surface phenomenon, and the cost for repair is quite a lot less. So these cracks tell a story to me, and definitely they point us towards what to spend or how much to spend. So we take this distress information and we put it on a scale. And like all good engineers, you know, we like scale from 0 to 100. Where 100 is the best road and 0 is failed. And as you can see here, we've tried to categorize them into 4 main categories, with the green roads being good or excellent, the red roads being failed. And then in between, I have a blue category, which I call at risk, and then poor. And there's a reason why I call it at risk, which I'll explain in a second. I also have 2 photographs to share with you, the 2 extremes of what a good road and what a bad road is. So where does Placerville fall on the scale? It's at 51. So in the at-risk category, these are the roads that deteriorate very, very quickly. We've hit a point in the service life where the deterioration is very rapid, and Placerville is there. In fact, it's going to drop into the poor category very, very soon. And people ask me, where should we be on this scale? And what I will say to you is that that's a policy decision, where you want to be. An analogy I give is if you have a child and she or he comes home and on a math test and they say, well, I got a 51 on my math test, is that good or bad? And that depends very much on the parent. As a parent, you know, when my 10-year-old comes home and if she says that to me, I might say, you know what, that's better than what I ever got at school, well done. Or I could be another parent and say, you need to work a little bit harder if you want to get into college. So what I can tell you, however, as a pavement engineer, is what the consequences are of these policy decisions. And again, like I said, I am going to share with you some of the results of where you want to be on this scale. Now, clearly, we don't want to be in the red or the yellows, you know, but is the blue acceptable, or do you want to be in the green? So here are some photographs of what these roads look like, just to kind of calibrate us to the PCI, or the Pavement Condition Index. This is a road that's relatively new. It's only about a year old. The PCI, or again, the Pavement Condition Index, is greater than 90. Looks great. You know, wish all my roads, the road outside my house looked this good. As you let the roads age, and this is about 8 or 9 years old now, they start to get a little grayer, oxidized. There's some a cracking that begins to develop, but still pretty good shape. You might say there's no potholes in there. You know, my kids can bike and roller skate on this, and it looks good. Now we have a little bit more. This is a little bit closer to the average condition here in Placerville. You can see that the alligator cracking is beginning to develop right where the wheel path is. And these are, again, like I said, a distress that tells me it's going to cost a lot of money to repair. If we don't do anything and we continue to let it deteriorate, you'll see that the alligator cracking progresses now towards almost edge to edge of the road. And finally, we might get it looking at this point, and you can see that the city here has attempted to patch it, and not very effectively, because it's fairly significant failures now. So let's look at the PCI of 51 and see what that does, what that tells us. If you look at the pie chart on the left, what this tells me is that a quarter of your roads are in the green condition, about 17% in the at-risk, another quarter in the poor, and very significantly, about 27% in the red. And that's not a good number to be at. If we look at the breakdown in terms of your type of road, your arterials and collectors are a little bit better in the blue category, and it's really your residential roads that are the ones failing, that are primarily in the yellow and the red categories. And this is not a big surprise. And the reason it shouldn't be a big surprise is that, again, like I said, your higher volume roads have tended to be eligible, are usually eligible for federal and state funds, and so the money goes there to repair it. There are also the roads where you get the highest volume of traffic, and so again, there is a higher priority placed on those roads. And unfortunately, the residentials don't get much. So how do other cities compare? On this chart, which I don't think the audience can quite see, but the red bar represents Placerville, and these are all the surrounding cities in the neighborhood, and they go all the way up to a high, I think that's 77. My eyes are beginning to fail me a little bit. I can't quite read that myself. It's 77, right? Yeah. And I think that is Folsom, yep. Now, Folsom is, I wouldn't say fortunate, because that is somewhat of a skewed number. And by the way, I'm going to make a similar presentation to them in December. I'm going to say the same thing. The reason that number is skewed is because they had an explosion of growth, a lot of new subdivisions. So a lot of these new roads are kind of pulling the average up, and they'll have a big problem in about 20 years when those subdivisions begin to age and they need to be replaced. But even given those skewed numbers and given the big growth that happened in El Dorado, Placer, and Sacramento counties in the last 10 years or so, even given that, I think it is discouraging when you see that Placerville, which is that little red bar, is really in the bottom 30th percentile in the surrounding area. And clearly that means, we ought to do something. So the next thing we did was we looked at, all right, what kind of treatments are appropriate? And on this chart, a lot of graphs, a lot of numbers and things, but the key thing I want you to walk away from is that it costs money to maintain roads. Whether we fix it now or wait till later, it's going to cost money. The only difference is how much does it cost. If I were to keep a good road good, it usually costs on average about $2 to $4 a square yard. But if I were to wait till it falls apart and then replace that road, it's going to cost up to $100 a square yard. That's a significant difference. And the analogy I want to use here is a car. I have a Toyota. It's about 6 years old, and I have two choices. I can take it every 5,000 miles and get an oil change and get a tune-up, and hopefully it'll run 200,000 miles before I have to get a new car. Or I can choose to drive it down into the ground, let the engine fail, and then go buy a new car. And intuitively we know that the smart decision, the cost-effective decision, is to maintain it, get your oil changes, get your tune-ups, and it'll run a lot longer than if you drive it to the ground and then buy a new car. Same thing with roads. So what I'm trying to encourage you to do, or to continue doing, is try to preserve the good roads that you have left, because you do have good roads, but not necessarily wait and fix all the worst roads and then come back and look at your good roads, because by then they may be in the blue category. So there has to be a little bit of a balance in the approach for repairs. Yeah.
Margot? Yeah, it doesn't say, is that an annual cost like slurry seal? Because I don't believe you would slurry seal it every year.
No. It's per treatment, and so, for instance, a slurry seal you might apply every 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
An overlay you might apply every 15 to 20 years.
Thank you.
The other thing I think we discussed with city staff was that there are a lot of new technologies out there to stretch the dollar. I don't think that we want to be in a position where we're not looking at these newer technologies. There's cold-in-place recycling. There's full depth reclamation. These are technologies that could save upwards of 20 to 30%. And a couple of examples I wanted to share with you. This is something that I think the city staff is considering implementing or executing on some of the appropriate roads, is you use the material that's already in place, you basically pulverize it, put it back in place, and then pave on top of it. So you don't have to import new material, you don't have to excavate rock from quarries, for instance. You reuse what you have, and it can have cost savings here, in this case, approximately 20%. A very, very effective approach. Not necessarily appropriate for every road. You do need a longer road with some materials and quantities in there to get a cost-effective contractor that's going to pay for it, but nonetheless something I think that should be looked at. The other one I mentioned is full depth reclamation. Many of your residential roads, like I said before, are in sort of in the red category, and these are roads I think that could be may need to be reconstructed, and if so, then I would definitely encourage full depth reclamation, which is again a recycling. You're reusing the existing materials, and not only are these methods cost effective, they're good for the environment because we actually reduce the amount of traffic, so we reduce usage of gas, usage of energy, and greenhouse gas consumption. Right now, greenhouse gas emissions are definitely a big issue for California, so this is one way to help reduce those emissions. The last thing we looked at then was, well, how much money do we need? And we looked at 4 scenarios. The first we looked at was the existing dollars that is currently being spent on paving budget, paving, which is about $200,000 a year. And then I know that there's a sales tax that's going to be on the ballot, and we said, well, if we had the sales tax for about 10 years, how much would that raise? We estimated it would raise about $1.5 million a year, and we added that to the existing 200, which is how we arrived at 1.7. And then we said, well, let's keep the sales tax for 20 years. What would that do? And then the last thing we looked at was a funding level of $2 million. So let's take a look at these scenarios. And this slide has 2 pieces of information on it. The first is the pavement condition index, which is the line that's going downward. And then there's this bar chart, which is the deferred maintenance, or what I usually call the unfunded backlog. And the unfunded backlog is work that needs to be done, but we don't have money to do it. So there are 2 trends. The first is, as I said before, your pavement condition index is going to continue to drop. And it's going to, by 2034, it's going to drop to 21. So on average, the streets in town will be primarily in the red category. Not only that, the unfunded backlog, or the work that needs to be done, is going to grow significantly from $18 million to $71 million in 20 years. That's more than 3 times. That's a big number. And I usually think of this as an iceberg. When we look at the pavement condition index, we're looking at the tip of the iceberg. It's a relatively insensitive measure. What's underneath that water line, that 7/8 of the iceberg, that's your unfunded backlog there. And that's the important measure to look at, is that if we don't do something now, the problem is not just going to get worse, it's going to get worse very quickly and to a point where you may not be able to easily recover from that situation. So then we said, okay, if we have this sales tax for about 10 years and we let it sunset after 10 years, what is that going to do? And you can see that there is a dramatic impact immediately, that we could raise the condition to a high of about 64, that's about 10 points in 10 years. But as soon as the sales tax sunsets, and we go back down to our original funding level of $200,000, you can see that trend, it starts dropping right away. And you can also see that the unfunded backlog also starts rising as well. So we said, okay, let's take a look and see, let's extend the sales tax for 20 years. What will that do? And this is where we really see some noticeable improvement here. We are able to reach a goal of about 71. PCF of 71 in 20 years, and not only that, we can stabilize the unfunded backlog. So this means we don't get to fix every single road till they're pristine, but we are able to make a big improvement, and we're able to stabilize that hole we're in, which at around, like I said before, about 17 million or so. The last scenario we asked was, well, let's say that, if we had $2 million, and here maybe, there's a lot of growth in town, your sales tax revenues are higher than anticipated, perhaps we get more money from the federal or the state government, whatever the reason is, we get an extra $300,000 and we let it go for 20 years, we can actually really improve the condition to about 76. That's pretty good. That's better than the statewide average, by the way. And now you can also see that the unfunded backlog really begins to start inching down to about $10 million in 20 years. So these are great, lines and graphs, and I just really have one more bar chart to show you. And there's a collection of 5 charts. The first one that you saw was this is what the existing road breakdown is. A quarter of the roads are pretty good, another 20% is at risk, and then a little bit over half is in poor or very failed condition. And the bar chart in the middle with all the red, that's what's going to happen in 20 years if we do not increase our funding. Almost 3/4 of your roads are going to be in failed condition, and that's the prediction that we anticipate. If we had the sales tax for about 10 years, you can see now is that 3/4 of the roads will be in either good or fair condition. Significant improvement. We still have a bunch of red roads out there, but we're definitely making some inroads. And if we had the sales tax for 20 years, now you can see that almost more than 3/4 will actually be in very good condition, and there's only about, looks like 13% that is in the red. And finally, if we had that $2 million scenario, almost all the roads in town will be in very good condition, with just about 5% in poor. So it begins to definitely make some inroads with fairly modest increases. So how did we get here? Well, I think the first thing that people forget sometimes when we look at roads is we take it for granted. You know, we get out, we wake up in the morning, we open our front door, and we're using the road. We don't really think much about it, except is it bumpy or is it rough? But roads deteriorate. And in this chart that I wanted to share with you, at 51, I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. That red line represents how quickly a road deteriorates. When it's first built, it's sort of flat, slow deterioration. But then it speeds up very rapidly. And at 51, you're on that steep part of that curve. It's just going to go downhill very quickly from here on. The second part of the equation, however, is construction costs. This is a graph that I got from Caltrans because they monitor the price of asphalt. And this goes back to 1999. And you can see that in the last 15 years, asphalt prices have increased almost 8 times. But has our funding increased 8 times in the last 15 years? It really has not kept up. So it's not so much a question of stretching our dollars. It's the fact that oil prices are the single biggest factor that contribute to the cost of construction for roads, because we depend on crude petroleum. And as the market for crude oil increases, cost of construction will increase. And our funding, unfortunately, is not the same, does not have the same, we don't get the same revenues from crude oil that we see the costs. So these two factors have really led us to a point where I think we had a very bad PCI, not very bad, but definitely a not so good PCI, and where we do need to infuse a significant revenues to increase that. So to really, I think to conclude, what I just wanted to leave you with is just a few key points. You know, the first is your road network has a value, and it's a substantial investment. And as such, I think as public stewards, we have an obligation to maintain that public asset. It is at risk. The PCI is at 51 right now. That's not great. The existing budget is clearly not sufficient. There are some key measures. We looked at PCI. We look at the deferred maintenance. We look at the percentage of poor streets. All of these metrics show it's just going downhill. So I think there are some policy considerations. This is just an informational item for council, but I think these are things that we ought to think of. There are definitely many policies that we have in place for the sustainable communities in our planning documents, but I think for our local economy, I think actually the second bullet and the third bullet for me resonate very much is that, you know, roads are there to be part of a quality of life for our residents, but we also get lots of visitors in Placerville. Businesses depend on a good infrastructure and a good smooth roads. Rough roads, by the way, do have a higher maintenance costs on vehicles. I mean, and we see that whether it's tires or windshields that may be damaged, there are some costs associated. But I think the last one I wanted to leave with is obviously, you know, we as all of us are taxpayers, we have invested in our transportation system, and we need to protect that investment. So with that, I'm open for any questions.
All right. Does any council member have questions of Ms. Yap?
Just great presentation. Thank
Oh,
you
thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah.
feel the same way. That was wonderful. It's certainly backs up what we've been trying to say, so, and this is, all the facts are here.
Oh, good, good.
Thank you.
I wish I had better news, I must say.
We knew what they were,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Tricia?
Go ahead. Oh, those, the super deteriorated, the poor were really creepy. And this whole thing reminded me of a movie called The Butterfly Effect, where Ashton Kutcher wakes up, and depending on the actions of just one small event, it's either this horrible, him and the people in his life are living these horribly grim, disgusting lives. And they can go back and just one little change, and everybody is beautiful and successful. And that's kind of how I was looking at the sales tax measure when it comes to this. It's, especially with the pictures, they're creepy, they're eerie, just to think of our town looking like that.
Carol?
I also appreciated the presentation. A picture paints 1,000 words. A couple of questions. So when you do your analysis, you take into consideration the existing funding, the normal level of grants that we would normally have been using. Is the attempt to get the roads, so if looking at it on the whole pie, would the attempt to be to basically keep the good ones in the good category, and then do you start with the worst ones and get them to the yellow, or do you start with the yellow and get that to the blue, or how do you prioritize?
So the priorities are basically for every dollar we spend, we want to maximize the benefit out of it. And remember this chart that I showed you. Let me see if I can get back to it. Right here. So what we try to do is you have good roads right now, and it's very cheap to maintain or preserve those good roads. For every road that we reconstruct, we can probably maintain 30 to 40 good roads. So I would recommend doing a tiered approach. In other words, I would not take all your money and go look at the worst roads in town. Because if you did do that, you're going to be worse off. And the example I have is in Santa Cruz County, I did a similar presentation to this back about 2000. And at the time, their unfunded backlog was $40 million, and they had about 600 miles of roads. So the first year or so, they were able to put in $7 million each to try and get out of that hole. Then we had the recession in the early 2000s, and they stopped doing that. And roads never became a priority. So when I went back in 2011 and I made this presentation and we did the calculations, their unfunded backlog had grown to $240 million. At $40 million, it was possible for them to pull themselves out of that hole. At 240, it is not possible without getting new revenues. So if you were to implement a policy of fixing your worst roads first, and I can run the analysis for you if you like, you will find that you actually start falling behind very quickly. You do need to look at preserve your good roads. Now, I recognize that you have some roads where there may be safety issues, and those have to be taken care of. So what I would recommend is take a look and do perhaps some what I would call short-term fixes on the worst roads, just to kind of Band-Aid them, tide you over until you can get some infusion of funds to really look at them. But start looking and attacking your good roads, preserving them, and working your way down that list. Okay. And as you'll see, with that 20-year scenario that I showed, it is possible to get all the roads in green condition, almost all the roads in green condition by the end of 20 years.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate your information, and go for it. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to mention, last week I listened to a webinar that Margot put on for the statewide, and I just want to point out a couple of things. Margot, I think the number was statewide, the average is 64.
66.
66, thank you. So that gives you something to, the PCI statewide is 66. And then the other thing that I thought was a staggering number is the unfunded backlog. I think it is statewide is $73 billion.
Right?
Yeah.
Over 10 years.
Yeah, over 10 years. So just wanted to point out a couple of numbers. Margot did that study for the statewide and now analyzing those numbers, so appreciate it.
I also know at SACOG we've trying to get everybody on the same page and using the same type of PCI so that when you're doing comparisons and you're applying for grants and you're applying for not necessarily grants, for distribution of transportation tax dollars, which is your gas tax, and
Right.
coming back to this community, that it's key that everybody's using the same PCI source. So the engineers are speaking the same language.
Apples
and
to apples.
you're comparing apples to apples, exactly.
Yeah.
So-
And actually, in Orange County, it is a requirement that they cannot get any Measure M, which is their sales tax money, without having a pavement management system in place to show that they are trying to manage the roads effectively.
Right,
So-
so, all right, well, thank you very much, and thanks for bringing this up.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. So at this point, we'll move on. I believe 6.2, we have a Community Cleanup Day announcement. Is that, Ms. Zito?
Actually, Mr. Yule is coordinating the event this time. I have
Mr. Yule?
retired from community cleanupping.
All right.
Yeah, we're going to have a busy weekend. This Saturday, November 1st, from 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at the Placerville Station, or the Mosquito Road Park and Ride, across from the EID buildings. We'll have El Dorado Disposal providing free bins for disposing of any trash that you may have. It's general recycling, so that's yard waste, metal objects, and appliances, but no items with Freon in them. And we'll be out there rain or shine, and we look forward to seeing the community help spruce up our neighborhoods. And once again, that's this Saturday, November 1st, from 8 to 1:30. In addition to that, if I may add one other announcement, we also have our great tradition downtown. The Downtown Placerville Spooktacular is Friday for Halloween. Trick-or-treating starts at 4 and goes until 6, and obviously Main Street's closed for that event. There's also a costume contest that starts at 6:10 p.m., and it's for all ages, and I think the adults have more fun than the kids sometimes. And then there's also a carnival right here in this building, and that's from 4 to 6. And so I encourage everybody to spend Friday and Saturday with the city.
All right. So the trick or treat thing on Main Street, the actual costume judging will be done also at the town hall, or is that?
No, that's right down at the Bell Tower, and
the Bell Tower,
the
okay.
Active 2030 Club helps us with that.
Great. All right. Thank you.
I just have a real quick question, Steve. As you know, if you've watched the news stations, they're all predicting rain for Halloween night. So what, is it rain or shine that this is going to go on? Or
We're rain or shine.
Even
There's
the-
only one Halloween.
I know, but I'm
Yeah,
just saying
we're
that
going
the
for it.
costume judging and everything, we don't have a cover down there.
We don't. And we've had we've
Just
had
bring
it
an
rain, like it seems like every 5 or 6 years it
Well, I was
rains.
thinking if it's really, really bad, maybe we could put some kind of a fold-up tent or something. I don't know.
That's a good idea.
Just
yeah.
a suggestion.
I'm sure the 2030 Club would like that for sure. Yeah. So.
All right. And just one other note. Tricia Wilkins will be one of our judges down there that night for costumes, I assume. Now, you're going to be judging the candy? No. Trick or treat candy? Okay.
Darn.
All right. All right. So we now move on to public comment. Do we have any written communications? Let's see, none. Oral communication, anybody having a comment that's not on the agenda, please come forward. And, your time limit's going to be limited to 3 minutes. And if you talk about the Giants losing, we may just cut you off. So.
I'll be cognizant of that. Hello, City Council members, Mr. Mayor and staff. I'm Mickey Kaiserman, a resident of Placerville. Measure I seeks to increase in sales tax revenues to improve the City of Placerville roads. Totally appropriate after this presentation. Marketing studies in Placerville have shown that most shoppers will drive down the hill west to shop rather than up the hill. That means citizens living west of Placerville in Cameron Park and Shingle Springs will drive to El Dorado Hills of Folsom. The citizens west of Placerville, Camino, Pollock Pines, and the citizens of Placerville, as well as tourists, are shopping in downtown Placerville and will shop on Missouri Flat Road, which is not part of the city. If the city requires additional sales tax revenues, There are sales tax revenues right across at Weber Creek and in smaller land pockets around the city. My questions are, 1, has the City Council instructed staff to look into how to annex surrounding areas for potential sales tax revenues? And 2, request from the county sales tax revenue sharing for sales taxes that are in part paid by the citizens in Placerville on Missouri Flatlet Road, along with reviewing the costs associated with these sales tax generating ideas.
Thank you. We answer at the end of, if we answer? We're not in general discussion right now, but thank you. Okay, just give them to Susan and she'll pass them out. Oh.
Chris Payne, Diamond Springs. Just so coincidentally, I didn't talk to Margot before I gave these things out to you. I had a discussion on these pictures related to the condition of the roadway, which is west of Mallard Lane on Green Valley Road. There's 2 issues. I did bring this up at the County Board of Supervisors a couple of weeks ago, and then we had a discussion, or at least I had a discussion with them, which it's kind of like the same situation, no dialogue back and forth. But the point was that we agreed that there was about 20% county responsibility and about 80% city responsibility. The 2 things that you can pass the picture around. The 2 things that are important here is, 1, on that page 2 at the top picture, you'll note that the berry vines are pooching out into the lane, and there has been no attempt by anybody to trim them back. What happens is that these 2 spots, the berry vines going westbound, and then the pothole, the huge pothole, forces people to go into the other lane. Margot had said you do your best roads first because that's where you get your best bang for your buck, except for public safety. This is a public safety issue. The white line that has been drawn around this area, it's quite a large area, has been there for, I think, close to 2 years without any change. This has been, based on the patching, this has been, something's been done there a couple of times to no permanent effect, meaning it's pretty bad. Formerly of the County Department of Transportation, I see this as that I told the county this is an issue that needs to be taken care of. It's not one of these that you can slide off. I believe that the picture I show on page 1 that shows the car actually moving into the other lane, I waited till I could get a shot, and it just happened. This shot came along, and I took it. I think that what we have here is a jurisdictional issue because it's on exactly the city-county line. That line that goes across the road is that line between the county and the city. Right. 20% in the county, 80% in the city.
Okay. So, thank you very much.
Is that
Time's
3
up.
minutes? Because I want my full 3 minutes.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for giving it to me.
Got your point. Any additional comments?
Good evening. David Cole, Placerville. I'd like to read a statement concerned with Measure K on behalf of the Friends of Historic Kingstown. Hopefully I'll try to get this done within 3 minutes. If not, because I'm speaking for a group, I hope I'll be given a few extra minutes. A little background information may shed some light on the current controversy surrounding Measure K and why Placerville residents should care. The initial public meeting for the Cedar Ravine Main Street Roundabout project was held in November 2007 and was well attended by community members, the majority of who strongly opposed the roundabout project. After that meeting, the response from the city was to merely fine-tune the roundabout details and analyze the need for replacement parking. 34 parking spaces would be lost due to the projects bisecting the Ivy House parking lot. The city ignored very real objections and concerns of the community. A second public meeting held 2 full years after the first provided no new information from the city, and instead informed the public that this was not the time to voice their objections. The public again strongly opposed the project and in fact suggested the project be stopped before any additional money was invested. Meeting attendees were told the time to voice their concern was after the environmental report is completed. Again, the wishes of the community were downplayed, minimized, or outright ignored. When the project finally came before the City Council for approval, Councilman Mark Akunis stated to the assembled citizens that because they did not support the project, they sounded self-serving and a little anti-business themselves. That has been the city's attitude toward the public in regards to the roundabout and many other community-impacting projects. Local business owners explained the serious economic loss they had suffered as a result of the Highway 50 construction. The Cedar Ravine Main Street project, with or without the roundabout, will block customer access and be even more damaging to their businesses than the Highway 50 project. Folsom businesses suffered great economic loss when a similar project took place in Folsom. To say the Placerville business owners are not justified in being concerned with future losses is irresponsible. Friends of Historic Canetown, made up of business owners, property owners, and concerned local residences and taxpayers, came together to stop the abusive behavior of the City Council in regards to this project and similar future projects. Funding for projects that include roundabouts has now become a way to pay for public road projects that may or may not be suitable for a particular location. It is important to note that Measure K only applies to future public roadways and streets. To put a roundabout project on the ballot will cost the city around $3,000 to $5,000, much less than the hundreds of thousands of dollars the city has spent pushing projects that the public has not wanted. Given the city's history of ignoring the public in regards to impacts, including economic damage and historical resource destruction, Measure K has been put on the ballot to allow Placerville voters to approve future individual public road projects that include roundabouts on public roadways and streets, period.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That went over 3 minutes, so if you're talking about the same project, Sue, are you talking about the same Major K?
No.
Okay. I just want to make sure I gave him time. Go ahead.
Sue Taylor, I was a little surprised by the presentation. I thought we did that same presentation regarding the roads not too long ago, and I'm concerned about, it almost felt like we were in an info commercial for Measure I. And I would have had some questions I would have liked to have asked the consultant about, you know, did they do a study on exactly what roads need to be fixed, how much, where can a small city go for more road funds, what materials are available that could cut cost, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of those different types of materials. You know, I'm curious how much we spent for this presentation today, and could that have repaired something that we need repaired? You know, I worked for the county, and I see study after study and not spending money on things that could actually be done. So I'm concerned the reason Measure I if it was a specific tax, I think you would have had more support, but it's still general, so there's no guarantees that this money will be going to these road projects. And I would also ask, you share with the county and the Transportation Commission, and I know a long time back you jointly wrote a check for $30 million to expand the Missouri Flat Overpass. And why not use that organization to fight for more funding for your roads in Placerville? And I agree with the sales tax sharing. If Placerville, through the Transportation Commission, helped contribute that money for those industry on Missouri Flat, why not have them pay for some of that back, or do more for that? So I would love to have a serious discussion about the roads, as I mentioned before, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Public comment time? Okay. Okay. Mr. Kelfie.
Good evening, everyone. That's all very interesting. I'm not here for an item on the agenda, but I want to share something that I think requires more attention than it's been getting. And I'm not here to criticize staff in any way, shape, or form, because I sat at that desk for 27 years, and I know how difficult it is to sit there and take it. That said, there are several code enforcement issues that probably could be brought to better light of the City Council. They're somewhat belated. They've been on the enforcement agenda at the staff levels for some period of time. The first one that I want to speak to is just a half a block up the street. It's the C&H Auto Parts accessory parking lot. A nice historic building was demolished about 11 years ago in favor of the parking lot. At that time, I told the property owner, Mr. Howe, that if the parking lot was going to be, or if the lot was going to be put into service for anything other than a vacant lot, then it would require city approvals. I informed him of that, and I put a note to the file to that extent. It's been 10 years. In addition to that, the sign that proclaims it a parking lot is also an illegal sign. So that's the first one. The second one is on property in the vicinity of Coon Hollow Road and Sacramento Hill. It's property owned by the Smith Family Trust. A council candidate oversaw the construction of about an 800 square foot building on his family's property that was constructed without the benefit of any plan checks or permits. Ironically, the building that was constructed bifurcates a city-county boundary line. It's a section line. But when you do that, it creates anomalies in and of itself. There's property tax exchanges. There are issues as to whether or not the city or the county would assume jurisdiction over the inspection and fees and so forth. That's the second one. And I think it's important enough to give it more attention than it has been received so far. The third relates to numerous actions that the City Council has taken over the years regarding abandoned pole signs and structures. And the one to which I refer is at the intersection of Green Valley Road and A&A Road, also property under the Smith Family Trust. It is clear to me and the record and the numerous meetings that I sat at, and the fact that the reports and so forth were authored either by me or my staff on that matter, it was clear to me that the council's action was to cause the removal of that pole sign, yet it still remains. And I believe that all but 2 of the 26 or 7 structures that the council declared illegal and to cause their abandonment have in fact voluntarily been done. And to that, I applaud those folks that did the expense and
Steve,
for the betterment of the community.
Your 3 minutes is up. So
My 3 minutes is up, and I'm done. And thank you for your
Go
time
home
and
and watch the
consideration.
game. No.
It's 7-0. I don't think I'm going to be watching too much of it.
Oh, all right.
8-0.
Never mind. Okay. Now, this is stuff that's not on our agenda, please? Oh,
This
Yes.
is not on your agenda.
all right.
My name's Jackie No. I'm a resident, City of Placerville, and I would just like to say that Friends of Historic Town do not represent me in any way, shape, or form. I'd like to ask the audience if Friends of El Dorado Trail or Friends of Historic Hangtown do not represent you. Would you please raise your hand?
Okay.
Would just like the council to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And, okay, so I'll close the public comment period, and we'll move on to consent calendar. So, do we want to answer any of the questions tonight, or we want to wait? The one question I would like, the study done by Ms. Yap and the engineering group, we talked about that several meetings ago.
We actually gave you a summary of it at your last meeting. Those were just some initial results that we provided for you. However, this study this is a carryover from last year's budget, I believe. So we're actually a little bit late doing it. So to think that it had something, I think it was funded prior to us even discussing any sort of sales tax measures. So it's well overdue. Normally they recommend you do them every 5 years. This is about 7 years since we've done ours. So.
Okay, thank you. And the revenue tax sharing, I believe 2x2. Would you please say something about that? Yeah.
Yeah, we have had discussions with the county about tax sharing, and those are ongoing. And so we are pursuing that. We've also had brief discussions about annexation. That's a much more difficult process, but we have looked at both of those items and continue to discuss those.
And we're sharing information on that Green Valley repair area. I mean, that's something we've been working on. It's marked off for USA, which is Underground Services Authority. Mr. Payne should be aware of that. But I think the county and the city are in negotiations, or Mr. Ewell?
Yeah, we're working on that. Hopefully November 5th, we're going to be able to do a patch pave project and address the drainage. So it's scheduled for November 5th. That includes the berry bushes, and that's part of the drainage problem.
Thank you. And I think that covers pretty much everything. So I'm going to move on to item 8, consent calendar. Anybody want to have any item removed?
I'll move for approval.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded and at this point I'll open any comments from the public on any items 8.1 through, oops, my time is up. My 3 minutes is up. Only went to another item. Through 8.6, any comments, questions? Seeing nobody coming forward, we'll move on. Call roll, please, on item 8.
Vice Mayor Borelli?
Aye.
Mayor Hagan?
Aye.
Councilmember Patton?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
Okay, no items were pulled from consent. Excuse me, we'll move on to item 10.1. Mr. Rivas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a little background. Back in February 11th of 2014, the City Council adopted a resolution that approved the housing element of our general plan, and that included a program to provide for employee housing within the City of Placerville. We are bringing forth this ordinance to you to basically implement that program. This item was last considered at your meeting on September 9th of 2014. The council did conduct a public hearing considering the recommendation of the Planning Commission to receive comment on this ordinance. It was then considered by the council on October the 11th, and the council introduced the ordinance and waived the first reading of the ordinance that was presented. And this action then is to waive the second reading of the ordinance and then adopt the ordinance, which would then become effective in 30 days should the council do so. And with that, that concludes staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Okay, I don't, anybody? questions? No questions here. Okay, I'll open up to the public for comments on item 10.1. Any comments from the public? Seeing nobody approaching the podium, I will call for the question and call for a motion, I'm sorry, first.
I move that we waive the second reading of the said ordinance and adopt the said ordinance per staff's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Item 10.2, waive the second reading of an ordinance eliminating the roundabout. Mr. Morris?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At your July 8th City Council meeting, the Council adopted a resolution, number 8230, eliminating a roundabout as an alternative for the Cedar Ravine Main Street, Clay Street realignment project. And Council directed staff to notify the consultant of the EIR to eliminate the roundabout as an option for that project. That was done immediately following the adoption of that resolution and is still in place today. There's no work being done on that roundabout. As part of that action in that resolution, you also directed staff to bring back an ordinance for consideration, which would also take the same action, eliminating the roundabout at that intersection. The ordinance would basically formalize the action taken on, more formalize, I guess, the action taken through the resolution. But the action that you would do here has already been done by the resolution. On October 14th, this ordinance was introduced and the first reading was waived. For consideration for you tonight is to, again, waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Any comments by council? Okay. Open to the public at this time. At this point, any questions or comments by the public regarding item 10.2?
Chris Payne, Diamond Springs. Mayor, can you help me with what happens after the second reading related to this item? And also, I don't want to be out of order, but I was wondering whether or not we've selected or are still in the process of selecting what kind of intersection improvements that we might be having. This relates to the broader Cedar Ravine Main Street, Clay Street realignment project. Obviously, there's still an intersection there, and so as being a former project engineer for the county and transportation, I'm wondering where we stand. And since I'm here in the audience, I thought you might be able to help me. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? So standoff.
Good evening, Marion Washburn, who will try to be more brief than last time. So much to say in 3 minutes is not a lot of time to say it. But I'm here again tonight to oppose the removing of the roundabout possibility from the list of feasible alternatives for the Clay Street Cedar Ravine realignment project, or the EIR process. And I'm here to focus on one particular aspect. It seems like there's many relevant aspects, but given the time allotment, I will focus it down as best I can. If the current traffic use in that area is perpetuated, and what I'm saying is that multiple stop signs, as there are now, if that is something that is there to be there in the future, air pollution will worsen because of it. And I think that is a very provable thing. And why I say that is the immediate intersection area will be clearly generating more traffic over time. There's Marshall Hospital, which continues to expand. There's Sierra School, which probably the school population remains somewhat static, but it seems that the number of parents driving their children to school keeps right on increasing. Downtown business area is growing and thriving. You'll be getting more traffic by the year. And tourism, of course, is attracting ever increasing numbers of cars. So for those reasons, the traffic activity in that area is clearly increasing. And Following that point, professional agencies such as Caltrans, such as Federal Highway Administration, such as National Institute for Traffic Safety, even AARP, and a number of other agencies have statistics, reliable statistics, confirming the degree of air improvements that roundabouts do bring into the picture. And the common number is about 30%. So in other words, by keeping the layout similar to what we have now, that is the stop sign, stop, accelerate, go configuration, we are committing to a minimum of 30% dirtier air in the immediate area of schools, hospitals, churches, commerce, and residences if that pattern continues. Conditions won't stay the same. We'll see more traffic, and we know that. People increase, things increase, and their cars increase along with it. So that 30% figure will increase along with the number of cars. And the traffic configuration that you envision without the roundabout will escalate not exponentially, it's overstated, but it will increase proportionally with that amount of traffic increase. I think confirming what I'm just saying is the fact that the regional transportation entity granted the city in excess of $1 million for a roundabout because it would diminish air pollution by 30%. So it's not conjecture on my part. It's been confirmed by those who've done the work and were willing to give us money to decrease that air pollution. So I will conclude by saying, as a resident of the area, 2.5 blocks from the intersection, I'm very concerned about the air quality. I think most people in my area are. I think our voices count for a lot. I have heard voices from people who live far away from the area in the city, in fact, out of the city completely, whose voices have dominated this argument. I do not believe that that's the way it should be. I believe that the people within the immediate area should have at least an equal voice on what will happen in the future.
Thanks.
So I request of you to include the alternative. Thank you.
Thanks. Have any more?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm Cindy Savage, and I am a resident of Placerville, and I live about 2.5 blocks from where the proposed roundabout, well, it wasn't even proposed. It was one of the things we were thinking about. I guess it was proposed, but it never got to a static, something that we could even see what it really was going to be about. And, you know, I'm kind of disappointed because I understood that there was, an EIR that had to be completed. And as a resident, I thought the council would wait until the EIR came in to make a good judgment as to whether this was a viable way to go or not. And I know there was a lot of opposition, but somehow in July, I missed the fact that, and I know that the yes on K people and a lot of people against the roundabout think that you have snuck a lot of things by them, but this slipped by me very quickly. And I just want you to rethink, if you would please rethink, at least leaving the roundabout not as an ordinance until we get a chance to see what the EIR has to say, and we can look at the alternatives side by side. I mean, I have friends that really hate roundabouts. I happen to really like roundabouts, but I talked to an 82-year-old friend of mine today that hates them, can't drive them, and, you know, it'd be hard for me to want to put her in a stress situation. Luckily, she lives in Chico, so that's not an issue for me. But I wish we could just at least look at it since we're paying for the EIR. Let's hold this and not make this an ordinance, and let's sanely look at it and get the total. I know that everybody that speaks says they speak for all the citizens of Placerville, but I walk there, I breathe the air, the fumes rise. I mean, you can show how the gas emissions rise, and it's right at my house, and I'm breathing the 30% extra emissions that come out are in my air. They're also in that little trough of air that goes right down Main Street. And, you know, a roundabout, you can like it or not like it, but you need to look at, as a council, your position really is to do what's best for us as a city. It's not a popularity vote. It's not whether you like me. It's not whether 1,000 people come down here that are from wherever they're from. It's, is this the right thing to do for our city? And right now, the right thing to do for our city is to not make it an ordinance so it can at least be included in the EIR and we can look at all the facts together. Hope I got all that right. Anyway, I really appreciate your attention and listening to me on this, and please consider passing on it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Seeing nobody approaching, I'm going to suggest you stand up as soon as possible, please.
Mayor Hagan, council members, roundabout or no roundabout, this is certainly one of the strangest events I've experienced in living in the cities that I have, many small towns. My name is Stan Morris in a historic Main Street. Whatever your decision tonight, it's certainly, I would think, going to affect some of our historic assets and some of our historic features in Placerville. As such, I feel an obligation to inform you of some information that I've have brought up in some research and some interviews that I've been doing over several weeks. I want to credit Marilyn Ferguson for providing me with the original copies of a document that I'm going to read here. It's not going to be too long. I'll certainly try to keep my comment to under 3 minutes. This document is a 1926 article in the Mountain Democrat written by A.B. Gray, who was the managing editor of the Mountain Democrat. It was around July. Mr. Porporato had an architect and a builder in San Francisco had been selected to construct a memorial to Frederick Sieg. This is just weeks before this was about to happen. He was going to arrive on the 17th and prepare this monument. So I want to read the article, an excerpt out of the article. I thought it was very interesting, and I think it's just some information we should have before you make your decision. And I don't specifically mean for it to influence you one way or another. I think we'd all be interested in this. So I was. In writing of the proposed monument, one author says, "What a wonderful monument this will be to the early pioneers and to the quaint city of Placerville. Nestling in the canyon of the high Sierras, the first monument of importance to greet the eyes of the tourists coming from the east, and the last to greet their sight on their return journey to tell the wonders of California in the state of sunshine, peace, and happiness. All who have cameras will take snapshots of our beautiful monument to prove to the home folks that California is a lover of the beautiful in art, that Placerville is a city where the portals of the past is recreated as a gift from the present generations to the thousands of yet unborn, that the Druids of California have shown their proper veneration and respect for the founders of their great fraternity in California." And I'll leave you with that.
Thank you.
Good night.
Evelyn Veerkamp, Placerville. I would start by saying that Cindy Savage lives about 10 meters further away from the roundabout than what I do.
So that's about 300 feet.
And I hope we remain friends after this is all said and done, because she brings me the most wonderful chocolates. And it is therefore particularly suitable that what I have to say right now is extraordinarily ambiguous. What I would say is that I'm not really sure what the point is of what's happening tonight. 4 months ago, a resolution was passed, and now tonight, exactly a week before the election, we are doing this ordinance. And it's very difficult not to consider this apart from possible strategy. I'm reminded that the Clay Street Cedar Ravine realignment and Clay Street Bridge at Hangtown Creek replacement project, which has been on the books for Placerville for at least 4 years, if not a great deal longer.
15 years.
Excuse me?
15 years.
4 years ago, it seems to have come significantly to the public attention and has been fairly controversial during that time. Several years ago, Randy Paces, who was then Director of Public Works for the City of Placerville, said to Wilbur Howe, in respect of the public opposition to that project, "It doesn't really matter what you do because the project will go ahead anyway." And that's sort of how I feel about what's happening tonight. There is a feeling of irrelevance about it, and we will see what that means. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments?
Sue Taylor, I just wrote a note and I gotta find where I put it. You know, the whole, I kind of agree with Evelyn. At this point, it seems like you've already taken the roundabout off the table for that intersection. I'm not sure how passing this and how that ties in with your general plan and how that works, but you know, the community wanted an honest discussion about the overall project of that intersection in general. And it seems you have one group that does not seem to care about the merchants in that area. And that's the discussion. Roundabouts, no roundabouts. It seemed like that roundabout was being used in a way that would be detrimental to the people in that community. And that community spoke loud and clear. And you know, I guess I'm being spoken to as one that doesn't have the right to stand up for that community because I don't live right there. And that community in that intersection works there. And to me, that is a community. And they asked for your consideration. And they're still going to ask for that consideration as this project, whatever happens with it, moves forward. And so whatever happens with this ordinance, I don't know that it's really going to make a lot of difference at this point. But, you know, I'd really like to see the city come back together and not have so much controversy between groups and sit down and talk to the people that are being impacted by these different projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments? Please state your name for the record. I haven't reminded people to do that.
Ben Butler, a resident of Placerville.
Okay, Ben, thank you.
Yeah, in regards to this matter, same matter, I feel real strong about being able to present, somehow inform the public with strong facts that could inform them with what's can happen, what the reality of is, it pros and cons, the cost factors, how it impacts safety, smog, the money funding the project, how that'll affect and contribute to Clay Street. Because I think in the spectrum of the entire project, it's critical for people to understand, or at least have it as public knowledge and information for them to view if they choose. However, it seems to be at this point, being a merchant downtown, it seems like there's so much hearsay. It's incredible. So if there's any way possible, I don't know, newspaper, internet site, anything to help people realize what the hardcore facts and impact it is on the town. All in all, you know, as we all know, whether it's left as is, there's going to be unhappy people and happy people. If it changes, there's going to be unhappy and happy people. So, you know, where do you draw the line? Okay, what are the benefits?
Kind of like being on the city council. Yeah.
So, I don't know, as just a person concerned with the city and its future, I think it would be benefit strongly just presenting something of that nature, just let people see what's going on.
Thank you,
But,
man.
anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Oops. I was going to start the lap meter here, but I better not.
Mickey Kaiserman, a resident of Placerville. Oops, a little reverb. Hello to all council members, Mr. Mayor and staff. As a city council member, you have access to the city staff and outside experts. The citizenry votes you into office so you can represent them on issues facing the city, as we cannot have a public ballot on every issue facing the city. The citizens have a right to voice their opinions at town hall meetings and public hearings. The citizens might be led to a wrong conclusion due to their frame of reference, including being afraid of change, never having driven in a roundabout, thinking trucks get stuck in roundabouts, roundabouts are not rural or historical, or that roundabouts are part of a UN conspiracy. One important reason that I moved to Northern California and Placerville was for the cleaner air. I am an avid backcountry skier, hiker, and sailor. We live in pollution-trapping topography in Placerville, along with lots of stoplights and stop signs. The evidence is in that roundabouts reduce air pollution, which should be an initiative of this city as it is for the whole country, as stated in the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Clean Air Act. It has been shown that reducing pollution improves the health of the citizens in that community. We have heard from citizens that they must keep the town historic. I agree with maintaining the historic nature of the city, but we cannot stand still in time, as necessary improvements to the city have to be made. The interchange at Cedar Ravine around the Druid Monument was a roundabout when there were horse and buggies. So where do those that want to keep the historic nature of the interchange choose to draw the timeline on what is historic? Is it the 1800s, the 1920s, the 1960s, or is it arbitrary? A similar historic issue faced the city years ago regarding the city's streetlights. Should the city keep its historic Cobra streetlights or upgrade the streetlights? A lot of citizens were against the change. However, the correct decision was made to upgrade the streetlights for safety and efficiency reasons. If you have previously voted for this ordinance, it's not too late to change your mind. I'm asking you to do what is right. Vote no on the ordinance and complete the EIR to come to the only conclusion adopted by many cities in California, that roundabouts reduce pollution and are safe. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, this time I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Any comments?
There were a couple of questions. Would you like me
Sure.
to-
You want to, I'm sorry.
Just quickly, Chris Payne asked a couple of questions I think we can answer. What happens after adoption takes effect in 30 days? Is that your basic question, I think, Chris? Thank you. Second one, what is being considered? The options that are being considered in the EIR are obviously a no-build alternative. That's always considered. And then a four-way stop and a four-way signal are the other options that are being considered.
Okay. All right, now I'll bring back the council. Any questions of staff, any comments?
I have a question for staff.
Yes.
Can you clarify for people who might not know what the difference is if we pass an ordinance or just leave a resolution?
Oh, sorry, your time's not up. You can start, you can start over again. I thought I shut it off.
I may ask the city attorney to add to this, but basically it's just a more formal method of adoption. It's more difficult to overturn an ordinance if it is passed. It actually takes an ordinance, so the same process to remove an ordinance as it does to adopt it. A resolution is the same. A resolution can be done in one meeting, a simpler process, and it can be removed in one meeting with the adoption of a new resolution. So, anything else?
No, city manager's correct in his explanation. Both the resolution and the ordinance have full force and effect, meaning they're binding. One is codified, that's the ordinance. There is one technical difference in that an ordinance requires a majority of the council to approve it, meaning that if there were only 4 council members present at the vote, 3 would have to vote for it because the majority of the entire body of the council, where a resolution just requires a simple majority of those present.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments?
I have some
Carol?
comments. I don't have any questions, though.
Okay.
So, first of all, I would like to thank everyone who came again this week and who has come over the last, I've been on the council now for 2 years. And I was there in 2007, and I was there in 2009, and I listened to the debates. And the problem that I have with what happened in July is that we removed a tangible piece of an environmental document, which means, as Ben said, we don't get a chance to look at the pros and cons of the 4-way stop, the 4-way intersection, the roundabout, and the no-build. We don't get that option now because the roundabout is gone. With that decision, we lost $1.3 million. That's a huge amount of money. And what Marion Washburn said about the California air quality people giving us that money is because roundabouts do effectively reduce the emissions that we breathe. And to be truthful, I live about a half of a block from this intersection, and it's all uphill. But that being said, when I was a planning commissioner, we were taught to look at basically 3 things. And if a project met all 3 criteria, generally it was a good project for your community. And that was, does it increase your social wealth, which could be your historical wealth, or pedestrian safety, whatever the community sees as their social wealth? Does it benefit the environment or increase your environmental health? And does it benefit you fiscally, which means does it not break the bank? This particular project was funded, it benefited the environment, and socially, as Mickey Kaiserman pointed out, that intersection was a roundabout to begin with. All I would like us to do at this point is to continue with what the court said. Continue with the EIR process. Keep the roundabout in the EIR so we can have a discussion about the pros and cons with everyone at the table today, because the people that are at the table today weren't there. Unfortunately, right, wrong, or otherwise, they weren't there. Wilbur Howe was there, but Sue Taylor wasn't there, and Evelyn Veerkamp wasn't there. So all I'm saying is, today, there's a different makeup of our community, and that's okay, but let's have a debate about the project. Let's continue with the funding, because our community can't afford roads. We just saw the pavement management study, and we are willingly giving up $1.3 million. And there's one other piece of this that hasn't really been brought up, and it has to do with the economic factors and the community that Sue Taylor talked about, which is the community of business owners in that particular area. Not 1 year the city had just finished paving Main Street. So they had already been impacted not only by Highway 50, but they had been impacted by a total reconstruction of Main Street. So it's no wonder that Sweetie Pies didn't want to have another project. I get it. I get it. But that doesn't mean that we as a body should ignore the fact that that's $1.3 million that we can't get anywhere else. If we don't keep the roundabout in the EIR, we don't get that money. And that doesn't mean we have to vote for the EIR or vote for the roundabout as the preferred alternative. That process is gone. This is a whole new day. As Wendy Thomas said, this is a new day. This is a new council, and I, for one, am sick and tired of being told that I don't listen to the community, that for some reason we have lied or misrepresented. The facts are we were taken to court, that the environmental documents were inadequate, so we went back to the consultants. We're drawing up a new AIR. Maybe a roundabout will show that it will upset the traffic at Bedford Avenue and Main Street. I don't know, because that wasn't in the mitigated negative jet, because that was a focused EIR. It focused only on the impacts at Cedar Ravine. I drive the intersection of Pacific Street and Cedar Ravine. It's a terrible intersection, and maybe a roundabout will be terrible for that. I don't know. We don't have that information. Without that information, how can we, as the governing body, make an informed decision? So I am asking my fellow council people to really think about pulling that roundabout out of the EIR, allow it to go through the process, and then we'll put it to bed correctly.
Okay, I'm going to follow up with, Carol voiced some of the things that I have been saying about this whole thing, that this diminishes our rights as a counseling body to look at everything and to represent the entire community of Placerville, not just a few who come here and, as far as I'm concerned, are giving wrong information. One thing I'm going to pounce on tonight is they keep saying that we didn't listen to the merchants. And I agree with Carol, the merchants up there they had been impacted by the Highway 50, and I think mostly, though, by the upper Main Street paving. When I first got on the council, this had been presented, and I remember going to 2 or 3 different to visit with the merchants up there and listen to, and we took all, in fact, one of the people that I was with on one that I remember distinctly was with Randy Paces, and we took all the plans, we sat down with the merchants, we went, and I was just a part of a team. All the merchants up there were contacted, and to say that we didn't consider them is just an outright lie. There's just no other way to say it, because we did due diligence. They presented their fears. One of them was the loss of business, which I understand, we fully understood. We made plans, and and you have to correct me, John, if I'm wrong, because you were there, but we promised them we would try and do practically all the work at night so that they would not be impacted. Most of the businesses up there are only open during the daytime. The Cosmic Cafe once in a while had a nighttime function, but all the rest of them are open during the day. We promised there would be no work during that time period. And so to say that we weren't considerate of the merchants up there is just not true. Another thing, Mr. Morris, I appreciated your presentation on the Druid Monument, and I quite frankly, I don't know how it was bandied about, but we were not going to destroy the Druid Monument. That was part of the project. It was going to be moved over 10 feet, and it was going to be in the center of the roundabout. So the Druid Monument was still going to be there in all its glory. And quite frankly, by having it be in the middle of a roundabout, more people were going to have access to find out what that monument is, because quite frankly, there's an awful lot of people. I did this on purpose. I questioned people as to what that is up there, and a lot of them don't even know. To this day, they do not know what that monument is or what it stands for. We had plans to put a plaque in to make the whole story. So those are just 2 things. And then we're talking about the pollution. and the area that's affected up there. Right now, that is I love the area. I love all the outdoor seating, etc. Those people are sitting in the middle of pollution right now. They're out there trying to eat, and they've got, what do they have? Stop and go traffic. Does that make sense? I don't think so. So all this would have taken care of that. But unfortunately, as Carol said, this was taken out of our hands. We were not given a chance to be presented with all those alternatives. I also am very concerned, and I've said this over and over and over, about Pacific Street and Cedar Ravine. I'm concerned about the Bedford, where it comes in from between the courthouse and the DA's office and all that. It's just it's so backed up. You all know that. You live here. It's so backed up. And this report, had we been given that, they were addressing all those areas. And I feel like I feel like the majority of our citizens, our tourists, were cheated by not allowing this to happen. So I still, I just think it's just so unfortunate that this whole thing has ever happened, and that it's been blown out of proportion. And now they've, again, on the ballot measure, this Measure K, to want to condemn us and our future, our children's future, of saying no roundabouts unless the public votes on it. It's just insane. I'm sorry. It just is. Every 2 years, we're going to be allowed. If you have a street that somebody proposes, oh, gee, maybe we could have a roundabout or a circular at the end of the street, it's not going to be allowed unless you let the whole town vote on it. What kind of sense is that? I'm sorry. This is just senseless, this whole thing.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you everyone again for taking part in this continued discussion, and I greatly appreciate my fellow council members' comments. I agree with everything that's been said, and I thank you for your intelligent perspective. I am at a crossroads because I agree with everything you said, and yet this process has been such a mess these last 4 years. As I continue to say, I have talked to members of Friends of Historic Hangtown. I have talked to people that liked the roundabout. I have talked to everyone in the middle. And about a year ago, I took a stand that I would not support the roundabout at Clay Street and Cedar Ravine, with the hopes that collaboration we could come together, find the common ground, and move forward together in ways that build our community rather than tear it down. And that has not been the case. However, I gave my word a year ago that I would not support this roundabout. And like I said, I talked to members of Friends of Historic Hangtown one-on-one. I talked to the merchants of the Clay Street roundabout, and was led to believe that if we took the roundabout off at Clay Street, Cedar Ravine, that they would pull back on Measure K, because they didn't care about the other roundabouts. There's two proposed roundabouts right now in the city. There's not 6, there's not 9 as proliferated on Facebook. There's
3.
Well, the 2 on the Western Placerville interchange. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And so, and they said they didn't care about those. The Western Placerville interchange has huge ramifications for our city that cannot be impacted. And because they went back on their word, they looked me in the face, they said they would collaborate, and they went back on their word. But that does not mean I'm going to go back on mine, because their bad behavior is not who I am. I'm going to continue to stand for who I am. I'm going to stand for collaboration. I'm going to stand for, I gave my community my word on how I saw this intersection. So I'm not going to support this proposed roundabout, and yet I am going to stand for us moving forward in a community in a productive manner. It is, like Patty said, it is time that this stops. And if I go back on my word today, I feel that it will just continue this vicious, ugly morass that we've created as a community. It is time that it stops, and that we look forward to building our community. So that's how I stand today.
Okay, so do I have a motion or?
I'll make a motion that we waive the second reading of the ordinance amending Title 8 of the Placerville Municipal Code and add Chapter 17 Roundabout Section 1, eliminating a roundabout as an alternative for the Cedar Ravine Main Street Clay Street realignment project, and adopt said ordinance.
And I'll second that.
Okay. We'll call for the question.
Vice Mayor Borelli.
No.
Mayor Hagan.
I'm going to abstain because of some of the same reasons that two of the opponents said. I don't think it makes a difference whether we memorialize this as an ordinance. We've passed a resolution, and I think that the next next council should have the right to at least look at a full EIR if that's what the wish of that council is. So therefore, I'll abstain.
Councilmember Patton.
No.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Driscoll, would you please explain the results of that?
Well, tie vote is the same as no action.
Thank you.
In addition, the motion did not receive the requisite number of votes, meaning by a majority of the council, 3. So the ordinance is not adopted. It remains as is without the ordinance.
And the resolution still stands?
Resolution still stands, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on that. At the last meeting, it was said that only a person who voted for the resolution could make a motion to undo the resolution. Is that accurate?
It wasn't, it was not a person either for or against. It was on the majority, the prevailing.
The prevailing vote.
Right. So if it was a 3-2 vote, any of the 3 could be convinced to bring that item back. The 2 that did not vote for an item to either be continued or go forward or whatever, don't have the right to do that, because you could have people constantly wanting to bring back the same item over and over again when they have basically lost that issue.
But in order for this particular, and I should probably ask this to the city manager, in order for this to get back onto the EIR, that resolution would have to be rescinded. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, so as of right now, the EIR still does not have the roundabout in it. So whatever council is seated, and when does the new council get seated?
We anticipate that the certification of the ballot will come in time for our December 9th meeting.
Okay. That's basically what I was at. I just wanted to know what would happen, or, you know, if we could get the roundabout alternative back onto the EIR process, what would have to happen? Because, I mean, I totally respect what you said, Wendy, and I actually respect, I mean, I do respect your positions, but I just feel like without looking at it as an alternative, it may very well show that Bedford Avenue is unmitigatable, or whatever.
Right.
We just can't
Could
fix it.
easily show that, yeah.
So anyways, if we could look at it, that'd be great. And
I have a question along those lines too. Okay. Does it have to be a member that participated in the vote? If we had new members, a new member could not bring up a resolution? Did it have to be an existing member who did the original vote?
Well, I won't be here, so there's going to be at least one new member.
Let me phrase it another way. If any council member wanted to bring an item back for consideration, they would still have to get a majority of the rest of the council to agree to that.
so you're talking about under item council member reports in that section?
That's one way you could do that, is to bring an item back for consideration, and if there's concurrence by a majority of the council.
Well, I've tried to add, get something on the agenda, and it didn't get concurrence. But that I wasn't bringing back something that we already voted on. So the 3 original people who voted to pat the majority, say there isn't the majority left on council. Could a new member choose to bring, because they weren't on the opposing side, they weren't in it, can they bring it back?
Yes.
Okay.
The simple answer,
also,
yes.
But also, existing members. Is that a good way to say it? Existing?
Still have to have a majority.
Right.
Yeah, I believe that the prevailing issue would be you'd have to get a concurrence of people wanting to bring this back for consideration
You'd have to have
and
at least
directing
3
staff to
votes.
do so.
I guess I just thought that you said that, I'm just going to use this example because I'm the one that brought it up and I wanted to bring it back for consideration, but because I was on the non-majority of the prevailing vote, I couldn't do that. It had to come from Wendy or Tricia or Carl. And so now what I'm hearing is if I wanted to bring it under council member reports as a consideration, is that then, I mean, I don't know. Then it's just a majority has to do a concurrence?
Yeah, not according to your rules that you've adopted. In your handbook, it states that if, as our city clerk has stated, it would need to be one of the 3 that voted in affirmative to propose that it be brought back up.
Okay, so even under council member reports, to bring it back, to get it back onto an agenda, it has to be
To have something reconsidered,
reconsidered.
it has to be one of those that voted in favor,
Okay.
one of the majority.
Patty?
Under the city manager's report where it says cost, it says that, the sentence, and then we are releasing back to them approximately $1,376,519 in CMAQ funding. This amount will also be removed from the city's capital improvement project budget. EDCT will formally announce the availability of the funding in their next funding release for CMAQ projects. The city will then have the opportunity to submit a project if we have one that qualifies. That money's been given back, so how can we even talk about, you know, I mean, we don't have any money to continue that. That was a very expensive project to get the EIR, and it's been stopped. Next day after, I understand, the next day after we voted, they called them and said stop. So has anything been done that we are, since some of that was paid for, I guess, or ordered, or whatever are we privy to what they had come up with so far?
We are privy to all of the information that they prepared. However, their final report will not address anything related to the roundabout. There may be information they have in studies that they did, et cetera. And I suppose if we requested that, they would be required to give it to us because we paid for it.
Right.
But
That's the
we
EIR.
won't see it unless
The
we
EIR,
specifically
right.
ask for it, I would assume. And I don't know how much of that they have.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, because I understand they were close, you know, when I kept asking for the report, I kept saying, well, they kept saying it's not, or you've told us it wasn't ready yet,
Right.
but they were close. And so if they were close, there must be a lot of information in there that perhaps we could use for future. But the money's been stopped.
Right. The money, I forget if it's come back on the EDCTC agenda, but I know that we're past the deadline that we had to take action to use that money.
Right.
And it has been
But what
returned.
I'm thinking is if enough information had been compiled that we could gather that, then maybe we could come up to finish it. In other words, you know, if depending on how much was left.
Recall also that this EIR, we were not using CMAQ funding to pay for this EIR. We were
Right.
using RSTP funding.
Right.
So the money that was returned did not affect, even with the roundabout in there. We
Oh,
were
okay.
using
Oh, that's right.
RSTP
Okay.
funding, not
That's right,
CMAQ
yeah.
funding.
So I'm going to propose that we contact the firm and, you know, get what we can and see what they've already, you know, the studies that they've been.
Can we use that information, though? Can we, if they don't you have the findings, can we certify that just based on what they had done so
Well,
far?
I don't know it would be certified, but it would be information that
And that
maybe
would
could
leave
go
us
for a
wide
future,
open.
you know,
Okay. So I'll bring it back on public hearings, item 11 and 11.1. This item was heard on October 14th by the City Council and originally continued to October 28th. The city discussed a further continuance with the appellant and has agreed that this will be continued to November 11th. and that has to do with the Boys and Girls Club appeal. Just FYI. There's no reason to, we don't have to read this whole thing. Item 12.
You do need to make a motion to continue it to the next meeting, please.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, and I will abstain on this one, but, so item 11.1, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed, and abstention for Mr. Hagan. And it's because I live within, I don't live, I have a building or have property within 500 feet of that project. Item 12, discussion and action items. Consider recommendation of Placerville Economic Advisory Committee for the city to release a request for proposals to perform a hotel feasibility study. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. For the past several years, the city has been attempting to attract a hotel to 3 potential sites within the city limits. The attached brochure to this document outlines what those 3 sites are and the provisions of each. One of those sites, as you know, started construction and then stopped due to the economy. At our Placerville Economic Advisory Committee meeting, actually the one in September, they recommended that we consider asking the council to consider putting together a request for proposals to complete a feasibility study, hotel feasibility study. A couple of years ago, in my research on this, I spoke to a hotel developer, and that person's recommendation was at the time was that we consider looking at a feasibility study to determine whether or not what level of hotel might work within the city limits. So based on that, I did some research and I prepared the attached request for proposals that outlines the information that would be included in a study, a hotel feasibility study. And I'm bringing this to the council to consider whether or not you would like to fund this at this time. I wanted to note that I also approached the owners of the property that was under construction, which is River City Bank, and asked them to consider assisting in financing this study. They declined to do that at this time. My initial estimates of cost based on the hotel developer that I've spoken to is between $15,000 and $20,000. I want to emphasize it's probably closer to the high end of that. He had given me an estimate on another study, but it was not as inclusive in terms of information as this one is that we've attached here. I want to emphasize that this is not a budgeted item, and therefore if you determine to fund this study, it would have to come out of the general fund contingency or for unforeseen expenditures. If you have any questions regarding the RFP or any additions, anything you'd like to take out of that, please let me know, changes, etc. And with that, I'll send it back to the council for questions, comments.
Questions?
I do. Thank you, Cleve, for that report. I have a couple of questions. It says that you said that you spoke with River City Bank as the property owner, but there's other entities that would benefit from a hotel, and a couple that I can think of out of the gate is the Winery Association, the Apple Hill Growers, Farm Trails. Have any of those entities been approached? I mean, even a little bit of money, if we could get some people to kick in $500, $1,000, or whatever to help pay for this, they would all benefit from it.
I have not approached them, and I need to mention too that I only spoke to River City Bank through their broker. I have not spoken directly to them, and so there may be other avenues that we could approach that. But no, they are just the owner of that property is the only one that I've spoken to. It may also be an idea to speak to the owners of the other properties. However, one is proposing an alternative development at this time. So
the second, the one down on Western Placerville Drive, did he lose that property? Do you know if there's another owner now, or?
Not that I'm aware of, Pierre.
Cimarelli.
No.
Cimarelli, yeah.
I'm not aware of any issue with the Cimarelli property at Forney.
He may not have actually owned that. He may have been just a developer.
He did.
He did own it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember that was in conjunction, I mean, because there was a question about the water or sewer, and They were
Lift
going to
station.
do they were going to do a lift station in conjunction with the housing that was proposed there, and I think that's all gone. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues to consider on that particular
True.
property. One thing I wanted to ask, I just recently sent Cleve some information about something that I had, we had a presentation at SEDCOR from a company called Global One, and we didn't have that, and I would really like them to come over and do a presentation for our new Economic Development Committee, and as well as the council, and I don't know how we could arrange that, but they have really done, there's a whole new avenue of funding out there. And I'm thinking that maybe we need to contact somebody like them first before we agree to put this much money in, because it wasn't budgeted and we are going to have to come up with it. That they might have some ideas too. I know Randy from SEDCOR has been working with you on this, but I really do think that this might be a possibility. They talk about private public funding. There's just all kinds of alternatives, and I don't think this is too small a project for them to look at. They go from small to large, is what she explained to us, and I'd really like for the council to hear this, because I think there's a lot of possibilities maybe with a company like that before we jump into this.
Okay. Wendy, do you have comments, questions?
Just a quick question. Have you seen this type of work done in other cities that you've been involved with, and what has been the outcome of this kind of a report or study?
I have not. I have not
Okay.
been involved with attracting a hotel. There was one in a neighboring community in the last city that I was in, and they did do a feasibility study for that one. It was a different situation. It was a golf course resort. But yeah, they did do one prior to moving forward, and they still haven't built a hotel there. I'll note that too. So, but it hit they finished it right at the end of when the economy went bad, the recession too. So
that
that
doggone
affected
recession
it. So
just really interfered with it.
Is this kind of study what hotels are expecting to see before they consider an area? I mean, is this kind of standard practice now?
I don't know if I would call it standard practice. I would call it more as an additional incentive to work with them in your marketing process, to show them convincing evidence that it will work. Right. I did speak to a hotel developer who mentioned that, hotels construction has been basically not happening because of the economy for the last several years. He did say that he is starting to see that coming back a little bit. It's not there yet, definitely, but there's starting to be a little bit of a change in that arena. So the fact that we haven't been able to attract anybody to this site, part of that is just because of the economy.
Funding, yeah.
But we don't know how much.
And that was one of the things that this lady talked about, is that things are beginning to loosen up, and that investors are more and more willing to loan, et cetera. So.
And we probably need one, and if we can get one done, then that would more likely attract other hotel sites.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It would seem to me if we at least move forward and authorize you to start this, you could look at the alternative funding things. I would also like to suggest that we contact River City Bank, the owner of the property, and let them know we're considering doing this, and ask for a commitment if they would like to use that information, or have their developer, their realtor use the information. It would be available for a price. I'm sorry, I pay a fee every month at the bank based on what I don't have or do have in my account. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Some of them just have a straight fee. But
didn't they?
So the fact that the bank owns the property and there are other owners, I think that's Carol has a couple of good ideas. Approach the Winery Association, approach the Apple Hill Growers Association, because these are the businesses that will, and I might even just throw it out to the Chamber of Commerce and get their opinion, because they may be aware of some funding that might help in this type of thing. And again, if we make the initial commitment and we find the funding for up to $20,000 and you were able to get $5,000 or $10,000 in help, that's just a positive on our side. And I think those people need to be able to share that information and know that we have it. And I agree that the Economic Development Committee, I think, is correct, that we really need to step forward and be ahead of the game and include check with CETA.
No, I was going to say, you said check with the Chamber of Commerce. I know Laurel has been she's also been working on this, trying to.
Right, and remember, she is a member of PEAK.
She is a member of
and
PEAK,
she
too,
was in favor of it.
yeah.
The other point I wanted to make is that I will check back again with Randy Wagner of SEDCorp, because he said he may be able to assist with some of the funding of this, too, through their organization. So I'll check back with him again.
Good. Great. All right. Do I have a motion or question? Anybody in the public wish to make a comment on this? Mr. Payne.
Chris Payne. Earlier I said that I was Chris Payne from Diamond Springs. I should say that I'm also a property owner, 327 Main Street, Placerville. So could put that in the record, please. PEAK is working very diligently, that is the Placerville Economic Advisory Committee, to be able to bring back what we believe to be good ideas. This discussion in terms of the council's participation tonight are also great ideas. So you're invited at any time to sit down with us and speak about how we may be able to fund some of these things when they're not budgeted. But we believe that economic development needs attention, needs to have that focus on a budgetary basis. The county has found that to be true. We can't match the county's approach, but we can at least be thinking of that in terms of these dollars that we need. But being able to go to these organizations or to these groups that you have spoken about, I think is very courageous and a very good idea, because it's going to take that kind of relationship in order to be able to be successful. John Clerici is also here tonight. We think that this item was important enough to have our participation, and so we appreciate this dialogue. Certainly, we want to go forward. We think this is our number one item right now, honestly. And so if you could somehow craft it in the proper motion to be able to move forward and at least make us seem like we're doing the right thing, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay.
Hi, I'm John Clerici. I'm a resident of the town. To give you just a little bit more information, and Chris is absolutely right, this is a high priority for us. I'm on the Economic Advisory Committee, if you didn't know that. And I excuse the way I'm dressed tonight, but I was out doing something and I didn't get home in time. One of the things that we struggle with in economic development on the Economic Development Committee is good, solid information. You know, we have a lot of really great discussions about how we can do this and getting a motel or a hotel, but we don't have a lot of data, and we see this as maybe a way to go out and get some really good information from which we can actually then, not that we're going to take this and go find ourselves a hotel builder necessarily, that would be wonderful, and that is our goal, but to just get some good hard data that we can start to look at, because, for example, with the site up there on Point View Drive, you know, they're into that, bank's into that thing for an awful lot of money, so unless somebody hands them an awful lot of money, the only way to build it is to start selling $300 a night hotel rooms. And, you know, you kind of look at that and go, maybe the town can support that. Maybe it can't. You know, we have the wineries and all that stuff, and maybe those kinds of people will come into town and they'll use that hotel. But maybe we can only really support $200 a night or $150 a night hotel rooms. And we've had some information in that regard, but it's pretty sketchy stuff. It's based on some surveys done by some outfits. And really we would like to try to get some better data. So if this is something that we see as being useful in terms of maybe going out and finding someone to occupy these sites. But it also is kind of, for us, kind of the beginning of sort of nurturing that idea of having some really good solid data from which to make and support decisions in the future. So anyway, just to give you a little bit of background on that. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll bring it back to the council unless somebody else has any comments. Okay, any additional comments by council members?
I have just a couple of concerns, and it's not against Peak and the work that they're doing, because I know that they struggle. My issue is strictly budgetary, and I look at this as a $20,000. Cleve said it would probably be on the high side, as a request out of the general fund that has already been earmarked. And I know we have the unforeseen expenditures, and I'm sure Mr. Warren could find $20,000 in his budget somewhere. I would be way more comfortable with this if we had a line item, if you will, in the budget for economic development. And then it was economic development, it was Peak's decision how to spend the money. They come to us and say, this is how we'd like to spend our $20,000. I am super uncomfortable doing this way. It doesn't mean that it's not worth it, and I hope I don't offend anybody. There's one other question I had, and that we participated in the Buxton report. John was talking about data. Didn't that provide data, and wasn't that a $10,000 check? Or I don't remember how much it was.
No, the county had the biggest share.
Let's assess.
Yeah, I'm going to look at Dave. We did contribute in the first part of it. The second time when they renewed their subscription, I do not believe, we did not participate then, I don't believe.
And what was the amount on the first one? Do you know roughly?
I want to say $17,000.
Okay.
Marshall
But that was 2 or 3 years ago? 4 years ago?
More.
I'd say about 4 years ago.
At least 4, yeah, it was before I was here. Okay. More, 5 years ago.
Yeah, because I know the city, the Marshall Hospital, and the county all
We all
participated.
in it. Yeah.
That's my recollection.
And let me add to that, there is data in there. And what they do is they show, basically, based on your size, et cetera, and various things, what type of hotel they think you could attract to this area.
But they don't have the hard data.
Yeah. So there is some information. It's not near as detailed as what would come from this. So yes, there is some information there.
Thank you.
Yes? You have any additional comments down here? Or questions?
Actually, I'd like to make a motion, because I agree with, what's up, go ahead.
I just want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if we couldn't make a motion that we submit the RFPs, and it's my understanding with the RFP is they'd come back, and then it would be up to the council to expend those funds. So at this point, we'd be authorizing you to send out the RFPs and ask Mr. Warren to find where the money is.
Or explore other funding options.
And explore other funding options. So is that close, correct?
Yeah, my question, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with sending out the RFP without knowing we have the funding in place.
Right.
I mean, we could simply say, one option would be to say, okay, worst case scenario, if we're not able to come up with any funding, we will fund it out of the general fund contingency for unforeseen expenditures. The other option would be to say, no, take it back, do your research, find out what other funding you can come up with, and bring it back to us at a later date, and then we can release the RFP. There's nothing to say that this has to be approved tonight. I mean, we have time. I mean, we've been waiting for, 10 years for a hotel, so we can wait another week, so 2 weeks. But so anyway, I'm open to that, and I tried to make it clear that I have some misgivings about this, if you will, also, in that, is it totally our responsibility to fund this? But that's where I am right now. So.
Yeah, I do believe that we need to start investing in economic development. I absolutely do. That needs to be our priority in the next few years. I also like, Councilmember Patton's suggestion that in the next budget cycle, we look for a line, a line item to fund it. So Peak knows that they have, something to work with, and otherwise we're tying their hands. They're spending an inordinate amount of time coming up with really good ideas, and then to have to say, hey, please, Mom and Dad, can we have can we have $5? And that's not fair. So I'd like to make a motion that we authorize staff to explore other funding options and bring it back to the council at a later date.
Second.
Any comments, questions, concerns? Okay. Any amendments? No. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Item 13, council reports, Transit Authority, Vice Mayor Borelli or Councilmember Wilkins. You didn't have a meeting? Okay.
No.
Transportation Commission,
No meeting.
no meeting. LAFCO?
We had a meeting.
All right.
We did evaluation for the executive director and certified the dissolution of Latrobe Fire District and the adoption into, or whatever, into El Dorado Hills Fire District.
Okay.
Cool.
So that was it.
SACOG, we had a meeting. We covered a couple of items. The only thing that really fits up here is submission of the Caltrans Transportation Planning discretionary grants, which I believe ours are going to come through the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. We had a special presentation on the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority and the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority and the High Speed Rail Authority. They've actually, the Capital Corridor, if you didn't know, and they're still continuing, they're doing a third or second track in the Roseville area, and their ridership and their number of commute trains to the Bay Area have substantially increased over the last 5 years. Have tripled the number, and they're working on several more into the San Joaquin, into the San Jose area from the Patterson area. Not Patterson itself, but I mean from all the way from Manteca over Modesto, Manteca over to San Jose. High-speed rail was just an update on how those would also tie in through the San Joaquin and the Sacramento eventually. Again, beyond my lifetime, I believe, but out there. SEDCorp, any meeting?
Yeah, we had a second meeting, and the program that I just talked about was presented. It was
Okay.
it was a great, and like I say, I'd like to somehow
Maybe get that information
And
to
Cleo, I was
Randy.
wondering, do you want to contact Randy about having, or
I'd be happy to. It's up to you,
I
whatever
mean, you said you were going to talk to
Right.
him about and then tell him that you've got the information. So,
Right, I've
and-
reviewed it.
yeah,
That's good
so,
information, yeah.
I'd like that presentation. I think everybody would benefit from it.
It may be, I know I can let you know, but it may be that, I don't know what the conditions will be for them to come and make the presentation, but
Correct.
it may be that we could look at maybe doing a joint meeting to have,
Okay.
so they only come once for
Right,
the,
right,
for the
right,
council
right.
and Peak, if you think that would work, so.
All right. Item 14, any requests for future agenda items? Oh, come on. Third time could be the charm. Nothing on this end? Okay. City manager, staff reports?
We have the one there, Dave Warren will make that report. This is in response to a letter we received at the last meeting, so,
A letter or request?
a letter.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a letter as well as?
That was, the letter was presented to the city clerk at our
Okay.
last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. During the public comment period at your last meeting held on October 14th, Sue Rodman had read a letter she wrote regarding the city's sewer and water systems. In her letter, Ms. Rodman posed 3 questions that she expressed are important to all ratepayers. And I would like to quickly review Sue's questions and share the city's responses to those questions with the city council and public. The first question was, how much of these water rate increases have been used to replace and repair Placerville's rust-clogged and inadequate water lines? How many feet or miles of water lines have been improved or replaced? And the answer to that question is, over the past 5 fiscal years, the city has expended $189,000 on capital improvements to the water distribution system, including 850 lineal feet of water line. It's important to note that $125,000 of that $189,000 total was expended on the design of the relocation of 3,500 lineal feet of water line as part of the Party Lane, Big Cut Road, and Sacramento Street water line replacement project, which is planned to go to construction in 2015. The second question was, how much of these sewer rate increases have been used for sewer line improvements, and how many feet or miles of Orangeburg sewer pipe have been replaced? How many miles of Orangeburg pipes are left? Well, the answer to that question is, over the past 5 fiscal years, the city has expended $1.1 million on capital improvements to the sewer collection system, including the replacement of 3,100 lineal feet of sewer line. The 3,100 feet replaced, of that 3,100, 400 lineal feet was previously 4-inch Orangeburg pipe. The city has approximately 2,200 lineal feet, or less than a half mile, of Orangeburg pipe left to replace. The third question was, how much of these increases have been used to restore city employees' salaries to pre-recession levels? The city employees experienced a 10% pay cut between July 2009 through June 2013 due to the economic impacts associated with the Great Recession. Beginning in July 2013, the city reduced pay cuts from 10% to 5% due to the improving economy. The annual cost of restoring the 5% in salary to the Sewer Enterprise Fund and the Water Enterprise Fund was $65,000 and $26,000 respectively in fiscal year 2013-2014. The city restored the remaining 5% cut beginning in July of this year. It is important to note that total Sewer Enterprise Fund personnel costs in fiscal year 13-14 were $117,000 or 8.19% higher than the 08-09 pre-recession level. Total Water Enterprise Fund personnel costs during fiscal year 13-14 were actually $55,000 less than the 08-09 level. As a comparison, local inflation as measured by the San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose Consumer Price Index, all urban consumers increased by 12.24% between July 2009 and June 2014. During that same period, city employees did not receive a cost of living adjustment to their salaries. Most of this information I just summarized is available on the city's website. Lastly, Mr. Morris and I spoke with Sue Rodman yesterday, and she was unable to be here, but she wanted to express that she was thrilled about item 8.5, which is the design phase for 5 Measure H funded water projects. So, thank you.
Mayor, if I can add to that quickly, in our conversation, we had a good conversation with Sue Rodman. It was this morning, I think, wasn't it, Dave, rather than yesterday? But I wanted to mention that one of the main points that came out of that is that we need to be telling the public what we're doing with that money. It's not so much, it turned out where we took it, I'll say, a little bit critical, and it was a little bit, but also that she wants to make sure that we're telling the public where their Measure H dollars are going, and to a certain extent the sewer and water rate increases, where those dollars are going, and emphasize how they're being spent to improve our water and sewer system. So I think that's an important note to make.
So how do you suggest we go about that? Putting it in the water bill?
No, I think there's two things. So as we approve these projects tonight and as we go forward, we do plan on when we're doing those projects, we're going to put up a sign that says funded through Measure H. The other thing that we will look at doing is maybe adding, when we send out rate notices, we'll look at maybe adding some highlights of projects that have been done in the last few years. So those are the two things that we looked at probably doing.
Well, that way, when the people are bothered by the traffic controls and the slower traffic through those construction zones, they'll know who to blame.
So could I make a suggestion, maybe? Do we do a state of the city address?
We have in the past. I don't believe the last 3 years we have, 2 or 3 years. I don't remember when the last one was.
I think we're going back even farther than that. I do remember when Robbie Colvin was mayor, we did it. Mark Acuna, I think there was maybe in the early 2000s, the last council meeting of the year, the mayor did an address, basically of information gathered by staff of accomplishments through the year.
Well, don't we just put that out in the way of a form? I don't remember, maybe Mark did one before I was on. It's been over, in 10 years, I don't recall, except maybe in written format that went out with the newsletter with the water bills.
Do you remember them going out in the newsletter? I remember that when the staff compiled the State of the City address, it was a staff report, and we had it, in written form in that last council meeting of the year's agenda packet.
Okay.
Let me just add, I think what I'm thinking of, I have had those done in previous cities, but I was trying to remember where it was done. Wrong city, I guess. But
Well, you can start working on it before the end of the year.
I have seen them done quite often in several cities. So
Thank you.
I think it's a great idea, Carol.
Well, and I think it can be done, it doesn't have to be like Mayor Johnson does, where he has a $100 a plate luncheon and invites everybody in the Metro Chamber to show up.
I think it's important, though, that we
put out the
toot our
information.
horn.
Yeah, if we don't tell our story.
We don't tell our story
agree.
well, and whether
I
it
agree.
goes on Facebook or it goes in the water bill or it goes in Steve Yule's news, the activity guide. I mean, I think those reach a lot of different people, and I think it's important.
All the above, maybe.
Well, I take it for granted that we do it with our budget each year, and
Well, that's what I was going to mention.
Who reads
is-
Dave Warren report? I'm sorry, no offense, Dave.
Most people don't even understand.
They don't
all those
understand it.
What we did talk about this morning as well is when we do our open hearing, we speak about the projects that you accomplished for the year, the previous year. And we describe those in titles. We really don't talk about the specifics of the project.
street
And
it's
what
on.
we thought is perhaps actually disclosing the length of pipe, the size of pipe that was constructed
Quantifying,
to help
yeah.
people rationalize what it is we did.
Yeah. FYI, EID in my bills that I get from them does include that on a monthly basis or on a bi-monthly basis. Just a one-page insert, and it's only a section of their little newsletter that comes with their rate height and their water purity study. It doesn't include in that particular one. They've got mandatory things that they have to do, but it fits in with the other, just the newsletter type thing. So, all right, upcoming events. We have the Boys and Girls Club hearing on November 11th. The GIS storm drain. Okay, investment report. Major J, the GIS storm drain is not part of the investment report. Major J report and a COPS grant. Anything else?
a couple other items I just wanted to mention quickly. David Church and Madeline Morgan from David Church and Associates will be out and make a presentation on that date to us
Okay.
also. And one other item, the city manager evaluation will be on that agenda.
And that's, you're all getting an email and a copy, and that response is to me, so if you.
Also, Mayor, back up quickly under staff report, I just want to mention 2 items coming up next week, and that is the MTP. We mentioned that last meeting, but the MTP workshop is on November 5th. And the next day, November 6th, is the Main Street reconstruction meeting. Also
I won't be
at
here for
Town
that.
Hall. So just so you know, those busy week next week.
But on the 5th, there will be a town hall types meeting from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Marshall Room, I believe it is, what it's called now, at the fairgrounds. So that will be an opportunity to talk about the regional, District 3 supervisor, and myself and staff will have some booths set up, and it'll be in not in a townhouse type meeting, a town hall type meeting, but it'll be in a round robin. You can walk around and ask and put your inputs in on things you want to see in the future for the next 20-year plan.
Mr.
It's
Mayor.
actually 25 years out.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'd like to ask Mr. Morris if there has been, if Caltrans has made an opinion on Measure K?
Well, what do you mean by an opinion? A legal opinion?
Mhm.
No, not
Okay.
yet. We're still waiting to hear from them. And I'm not sure that they are going to. We can ask them. I'm not sure that they are willing to do that at this point.
Okay.
It's my understanding they're looking more, if it does pass, they would make a decision at that time.
Oh, I see.
So,
And I'd also like, if it's the rest of your provision, the second meeting in November, the week of Thanksgiving, that we officially bring back at the next meeting and cancel that meeting, so it's officially canceled. And do you have also a thing on the staffing for that day for the City Hall, for closing the day after?
yeah, that
Christmas?
one, yeah, probably we'll bring that back on the 11th, Susan, the item for Christmas. Just briefly, we're looking at, Christmas falls on a Thursday. Normally, we would be working our normal Friday, the day after. However, all staff have one holiday which they can take either before or after Christmas, before or after New Year's. It's one holiday for one of those 4 days. Our recommendation and what we're looking at is asking staff, and most staff have responded they're in favor of just closing City Hall that Friday after Christmas and using that one holiday that they have. So it doesn't really have any effect on cost to the city or anything. It just means that they would cancel that. We would be closed on that Friday after Christmas. It's usually, especially when it's one day like that in between, it's usually a pretty
It
down
also
day.
frees up more parking for the downtown merchants if we're
Yes.
not there.
So, Carl, which council meeting are you
I'm talking about canceling the November 25th meeting. The week of Thanksgiving, I believe, is the 27th.
Thanksgiving is the 27th, yes.
Right. So the 25th, we would cancel that meeting so that they can come back and formalize it.
And then the Christmas one would be the 23rd?
The
25th, or 26th, excuse me, the day after Christmas.
Well, you're talking about
He's talking
that.
about canceling the
Cancel it.
meeting on the 23rd.
Oh, okay.
So the meeting
We
prior to
normally
Thanksgiving?
do that. We'll bring that back to you.
I have it on my calendar as already being canceled.
Well, on our schedule that we do at the beginning of the year, we show it as being canceled,
Right.
so.
All right. So the only one that's not on our schedule is the one for November 25th. So if you'd bring those back, please. Okay. All right. Next regular council meeting will be November 11th, Veterans Day for all you veterans. 5 p.m. closed session, 6 p.m. regular session. See you then. Good night.